I made this video to share with you a project at Monash University that I think would make an intriguing addition to the typical classrooms at schools. The project's been designed for the IT department at Monash University, and it is a virtual reality research laboratory. And it's going to be used to improve how data is understood through visualization. And this is an example of one of the studies they are doing in it, where using virtual reality in a room, they're creating individual areas for people to visualize data and interact with each other, rather than at a static computer or workplace. This example is taking what is quite pragmatic information, which is the results from a sprint race or the size of buildings, and using virtual reality and the data from that to actually graphically represent it. Now, you've got to keep in mind, in virtual reality, you are immersed in this space, so you are understanding, you're feeling you're part of this. So using that data to actually show you who is running the fastest or the slowest, and using the data to show you at one-to-one scale the size of buildings. Jamer Hunt wrote this book, Not to Scale, and what I find particularly interesting about this book, and it's relevant to this project, is he touches on this idea that as everything has become electronic, where we used to have a handheld compass and we could actually feel and understand the scale of that, so many things have become electronic and are now embedded in our mobile phones or in our computers. You know, we get thousands of emails, gigabytes of data. And as a consequence of that, it's really difficult for us to understand the scale of things, because the physical scale of them has disappeared. And along with that, understanding that physical scale, what it means is we really struggle to actually put scale to decision making. Everything in a way becomes critical, essential, urgent. And as a result, every decision we make becomes extremely difficult to make. And I wonder if using the abilities of a virtual world to actually help us bring back that sense of scale, because you're actually embedded in there. And when you're looking at a building or an object or something in that virtual world, you actually do get a sense of the scale of it. That might actually help us bring back a sense of scale and how we make decisions and deal with data and information in day-to-day life. So, and I've been thinking, how does this apply to a school? A university has this research lab, but how could you apply this to a school where it could help students learn? And I think there's some really simple examples which will push home the point. For instance, if you think how we learn about volume, this is a cone and there's a mathematical equation that you have to understand that. But for a young person to actually understand what that volume might be, some might get it and some might not. The way they visualize things is more important than looking at it in a drawing. And virtual reality gives us that ability to help people understand something in 3D. Volume is 3D and virtual reality is in 3D. The other one, for instance, is this exhibition with Van Gogh at the moment. You could learn about art and post-impressionism and Van Gogh, looking at images and books, and that's absolutely valid too. But there's also the opportunity to create these immersive environments where people can explore it, and that is likely to be far more engaging for young people. And I've witnessed that with my year 12 son, who went to go and see this exhibition, but I'm quite sure I could never get him to look at an art book. The other example is makerspaces. Lots of schools have makerspaces and 3D printing, and a great idea of crafting things and making things and using your hands. But imagine a facility where you could actually complement that makerspace with a virtual reality facility where you're actually designing in one-to-one. So that 1 to 100 building or model or something that you're printing in 3D, you can actually create that and design it and make the drawings all at 1-to-1 scale. And then you can even make the decision, should I print it, or is it good enough to actually live in a virtual world rather than printing it? And we also talk of the importance of storytelling. And can you imagine the opportunities for our children at school to not only write about stories, but to actually create them and tell them in virtual worlds? And then I think the other intriguing idea of having a facility like this to complement the other rooms is what students could actually do with a facility like this, given access to it, and just given the chance to create things and use their imagination. If you imagine saying to a group of students, take our classroom and see what you can do with it, I'm sure they would be very uninspired. But if you could imagine giving them a space with virtual reality tools and software and encourage them to learn how to use that and see how they might actually use it, I think they would come up with some very intriguing, interesting ideas, and ones that would absolutely intrigue them and help them learn. So when we were given the brief for this project, our original reaction was a room for VR. Well, that's just a blank room with some walls. There'll be some people walking around in there with weird looking headsets. So what do you need architects to do that? It's just a simple room. But the more we spoke with them, the more we realized the opportunities for a research space like this. And when we started thinking of, creating a really engaging space, one that what was happening here could actually be shared with people outside of the room. And when we started looking at that, suddenly the project really came alive for us. And so here's I'm going to take you through some slides of things that inspired us over the project. So the first one was, I think when people think of VR, even though it is an everyday, it's readily available, a lot of people still see it as something in the future. And so we started thinking of these sort of dystopian movies. This is Blade Runner, the new version of Blade Runner. Because, I think people, even some generations, see VR as sort of a dystopian future where we'll all live in virtual worlds. But we thought we'd kind of have some fun with that. And so we started looking at those kind of images and taking some of the colors for that and using that in the project. And these are some images of the finished project, and you can get a sense there of how we've used that mood to also create a mood in there, the oranges, the yellows, the purples, the blacks, and making it quite a moody space. And then the other one idea we looked at was this idea of, well, virtual reality is a 3D space, so you need to locate yourself in that space. And we're all familiar with images like this, which talk of an X, Y, and Z axis. And so we use that as a way of bringing in a grid into the floor. So referencing that grid, and also the practical aspect of people actually being able to locate themselves within the space and being able to grid off a certain area of that floor that they would use for the virtual reality. But I think what I actually like most about this project is that this is what was there before. Traditional lecture theatre, tiered seatings, front of house, and that's been replaced with a cutting edge, forward thinking research space. It's not a teaching space at the moment, but I think whether it's research or teaching, I think in the end it's suitable for both. I think it's just how you perceive or what you think you can actually do in this facility. And you can see we started opening up the walls, so making this space and the activities in it visible to passers-by, where you go back to the lecture theatre, it was just a closed-in space. No one would actually know what was going on in there until you walk through the front doors. And then this is the outside corridor space. And this was a real challenge, was to think, how do we actually put a new contemporary space into a sort of a degraded, uninviting space like this? And this to the right here is the area in which the IT lab was built. I mean, you can see a very uninviting corridor. And this cream brick is evident through a lot of the Clayton campus. But what we actually thought was, if we actually treat it almost like a heritage building and we respect for what was there already and actually play up the cream brick, we might actually come up with a good result. And so that's what we did. We kept the cream brick. We put these windows through so people could see in. And then when we closed off existing openings, we actually acknowledged that in the way that we treated the brick, so that there was a history of what this was before and a very, very clear idea of what it is now. And even in the tiers and the seating, so when you come inside, you'll see these actually step up. So because the tiered floor in the lecture theatre was concrete, we actually decided to keep some of that and use that as a way of setting out the cupboards and joinery. And in the end, it's actually a really simple program that goes into this project. It's a single space. There's 2 zones. There's a work zone with some desks, and there's a VR zone with 4 areas where you can have individuals using headsets or groups of people using headsets. We've punctured the existing wall with openings so that you can see in, and then introduced this ribbon of cupboards just to bring some cohesiveness to it. But a really quite a simple program, but I think the outcome far exceeds the idea of where we started. Over the last few months, there's been some commentary around Facebook renaming to Meta. And even Iceland have come up with a catchy tourism video called Welcome to the Iceland Verse. And in it, they talk about users can explore and navigate their way through the many different layers of captivating reality just by visiting. Obviously playing on the idea that why would you want to have a virtual world when we have the real world to enjoy? It's there, it's much more enjoyable. And I just think, I get it for a tourism video, it's cute, it's funny, but I think for us to dismiss the realities of a virtual world is we're dismissing the thoughts of our children. They spend a lot of time in virtual worlds and they enjoy it, and they create these social groups in virtual worlds. And I think it's wrong for us to dismiss it, because in dismissing it, I think we are really dismissing great opportunities that we can find there to improve how students learn, improve how we understand things, to create things, and to innovate. And in the IT research lab, I see a physical pathway, a facility that will actually help both adults and children understand and navigate this time between the physical world and the virtual world, and trying to understand what is the balance between the two, and what do we do in the virtual world and what do we do in the real world. And it doesn't have to be one or the other, but a blend of both. Thank you.